I think at the end of the day, Stephen Sondheim didn't hear him sing before he had decided that he would accept the fact that Johnny was going to do it. And you just look at Johnny's body of work and you realize that, you know, this is a man who holds himself to the highest possible standards. And we all knew that if he said he could do it, he could do it. It helped to know that, in fact, and it's a little known fact, that he originally came to Los Angeles not as an actor, but as a musician.
What I did was I called up an old pal of mine that I had played in bands with for years. In fact, the guy he was the singer, you know, pretty much the singer, main singer of the band. And he has a recording studio, and I called him and said, you know, I got this stuff I'd like to try and sing.
Well, singing Sweeney Todd, they say, is like an opera more than Broadway. It's really hard. There's a lot of half steps. There's a lot of, you know, chromatic lines running up, and, you know, neither Johnny nor I can read music, so we were like using our ears and going, what is that, you know? It's pretty funny to see a couple guys out of the rock and roll days trying to figure out this amazing piece of music, but at the end of the day, it's a song and a singer and a melody, and it could be complicated, but it was fun figuring it out. I called my friend upstairs who could read music and go, "Can you come down and tell us exactly what note this is?" We went in my place and drank some wine for a bit and smoked a bunch of cigarettes, and then it was like, were you gonna do this or what?
Just started kind of knocking them down one by one. You know, starting with My Friends, that was the first thing I ever sang. Like, basically, that was the first song I ever sang in my life. You know, that was pretty weird. Yeah. Scary.
Honestly, when we did the first take of the first song we did, which is My Friends, basically had to talk back. I said, "You want the good news or the bad news?" He goes, "Well, give me the bad news." I said, "The bad news, you have to do this."
One day I was in my office on the phone. Tim bursts in and lays down a little cassette player and his headphones. And I didn't know what he was doing, and he walked out. So I got off the phone and put them on and listened to Johnny sing for the first time. And I just put it down, went into Tim's office, and we both just stared at each other with great relief, but we had the biggest smiles at each other because we knew we had a great voice with Johnny Depp.
I wasn't sure if I'd be able to sing, you know, any of it. I certainly wasn't convinced I'd be able to sustain a note. I thought maybe I could hit it. You know, I knew I wasn't tone deaf.
All of the whole human race, Mrs. Lovett, there are two kinds of men and only two. There's the one staying put in his proper place, and the one with his foot in the other one's face. Look at me, Mrs. Lovett, look at you.
That was, you know, in many cases, you know, the booger. you know, holding a note for 12 beats. Yeah, not easy. There were several instances when I thought, well, you know, I'm just gonna hit the deck. You know what I mean? You know, I ran out of air about 5 minutes ago. Just pass out. Bam. And I'm full of joy. That's beautiful stuff to sing. I can only imagine that it must be really nice if you're a singer.
When I first heard Johnny, I thought, wow, it's amazing. He sounds like some kind of like rock star.
All right.
You know, just by the nature of him doing it, brings something different to it.
Come and visit your good friend Sweeney.
And I'd say that about all the actors. Because they're not singers, they all bring a certain modern quality to it, which is in the piece, but it just pushes it, I think, that much further.
Was it quick, sir? Did it in a tick, sir? Just like an elixir ought to do.
I am Adolfo Pirelli, the king of the barbers, the barber of kings. Buongiorno, good day. I blow you a kiss.
It was such an amazing thing that Sasha, you know, he's like the biggest star around, and that he just said yes to doing this. It just made me respect him even more as an artist.
Action! It wasn't our idea, but he asked to come in and came in to a recording studio with Tim and I sitting there. We met him for the first time. Very handsome, actually. People, you know, think of him as Borat. He's actually a very nice-looking fellow. He told us that he always loved the show, that he had sung early on in his life in choirs and things like that. We asked him to step into the booth, but he wasn't prepared to sing from Sweeney Todd.
I'll never forget, he comes in for an audition. He comes in with the songbook for Fiddler on the Roof. And I wish we had it on film, because he did like pretty much the whole Fiddler on the Roof, you know, abridged version of, and it was fantastic.
Tim and I were literally on the floor, on our hands and knees, buckled over. Despite all the laughter, we realized this guy's got a great voice. And he had the part right then.
And the winner is Tom.
Greenfinch and linnet bird, nightingale, blackbird, how is it you sing?
I think what's been fascinating and complicated at the same time is that we had to commit to performances singing before we were acting. So we recorded the whole of the score before we started shooting.
All the actors, once they were selected, spent a lot of time working on their voice. Each had individual instruction. We were determined that every cast member used their own voice.
Nothing's gonna harm you, not while I'm around. Nothing's gonna harm you, no sir. We did it at Air Studios. It was quite a shock because I was recording live with the orchestra at the time. So being my first time in a big recording studio, it was really amazing. I don't care, I got ways.
Pretty women.
Silhouetted. One of the more challenging moments in one's life is when you've got the music in your hand and you're in a huge rehearsal room and Stephen Sondheim walks across the room and says, "Okay, let's hear it." It doesn't get much tougher than that, but it's so tough and it's so ridiculous what you're about to do, i.e. sing for Stephen Sondheim, that something in the body just says, well, then just do it.
Ooh, Mr. Todd, I'm so happy. I could eat you up, I really could. You know what I'd like to do, Mr. Todd? What a dream.
I was a little nervous, which meant that my singing wasn't as good as it could have been. And I think a lot of people felt that as well. So they thought, well, what we'll do is we'll take them to a smaller studio and we'll just have the playback from the track that they've recorded with all the orchestra. So we went to the smaller studio and into this nice little room. It was very, very comfortable. Like, you had little candles burning in the corner, like sofa, and it was just like Tim and Mike who does the music.
When we're through our gippers, I'll be there slipping off your slippers by the sea with a fishy splash.
Good. Okay, same place?
It's very difficult to breathe here.
I know.
He hasn't left a lot of room.
He hasn't left a lot of room for breath, has he? Sounded okay there.
Okay.
Have another go.
By the sea is really tricky because there's no space to breathe at all.
2, 3, 4.
By the sea, Mr. Todd, that's a life I
I think Angela Lansbury lost her voice routinely at the end of the show. I was really comforted to read something that Angela had said, that she actually confronted Sondheim and said, well, where do I breathe? And he said, well, oh, no, I didn't write anywhere you could breathe, you just don't.
With the sea at our gate, we'll have Kipper daring. What a fun to us straight from the Straits of Bering. Every night in a kip when we're
Helena, because she's got so many of the tough songs and she's having to find her character in the recording studio in a way, that's been a challenge because she's never really known, well, where am I going to be?
A and B turns.